Hey everyone, welcome to this second video in my Errant Exercises for Guitar video series. This video series is me trying to take a musical concept and bring it from a theoretical analytical point and then try to push it with an exercise into kind of a more intuitive place where we feel like we can speak with these concepts. Now this is kind of a special one. This is going to be on, I'm calling it Finding Chords 101 or Harmonic Ear Training 101. And we're going to be exercising a much more important muscle than our fingers, so guitars down. Put the guitar down. You're not playing it for a little bit, at least. Let me tell you when you can pick up your guitar. Now, the way I'm going to do this is I'm just going to play a chord progression for a while, and I'm going to ask you a series of questions. And you're going to find out what is easy for you to figure out and what's hard for you to figure out, but the idea is to kind of like go through this list and see if you're really comfortable with all of that. After that, I'll kind of go through what those questions are and what they're important and different things about them, and then give you a couple tips and tricks about picking out chords. Now, spoiler, one of the big techniques here is going to be melodies, melodic stuff, singing and then playing, because something people don't understand about analyzing or like trying to pick out harmonic chord progressions is chords are essentially a series of melodies. Right? And melodies are much, much easier to figure out. If I can sing a note, ba, I can find it on the guitar. If there's a chord, there's a whole bunch of different things going on there. So I'm going to give you some tricks about how to figure out that for chord melody and how to take chord progressions that you really like and try to make them more intuitive to improvise on or that sort of stuff. But we'll get into that a little bit later. I'll try to put time codes below. I'm going to play this really simple chord progression and go through these questions. So let's see how this goes. Don't feel if you don't get something, a lot of this takes practice. Okay, so here's this simple chord progression. You might already know what the chords are. That's okay. Let's get into these questions. So the first question is, where's the beat? Where are you feeling the beat on this? And there's actually a couple right answers, right? Sometimes it's nice to figure out, I don't know, when you're playing songs, sometimes you can change the way you're feeling the beat, and it really kind of changes the way you play. Okay, now, how are those beats grouped? Now, often they're grouped in 3s or 4s, right? Thinking about 3/4, 4/4 timing. I'm not worried about what time signature this is. I'm just worried about like how many beats are those grouped in. And even really complicated stuff is only just mixtures of 2s and 3s, so it's not as hard as it always seems. Okay, so now the next question is, when does this chord progression repeat? Are you really confident about when the repeat line is for it? Because that's really important. Then you can ask yourself, okay, how many times is the chord changing in that repeat section? Right? How often are we changing chords? You can also ask yourself, how many unique chords in total am I playing? Do I repeat certain chords or whatnot? Now, this one's really important and kind of brings us to our next thing, is when is this chord progression resolved? Right? And sometimes this can be a little bit like, what's the word I'm looking for? Subjective, In this progression, I wouldn't say so. I think everyone knows where this one is. Or like, so which chord does it resolve on? Does it resolve right at the beginning? Or like, is it resolved when we start? Or is it resolved when we end? Or somewhere in the middle? Right? Like, have that feeling. Alright? Another thing we can do, and this will we'll do a little bit later because I don't want to stop playing this progression, is when it feels resolved, can you sing a note? Just any old note. Sing a note when it feels resolved. And if it sounds wrong, kind of pitch it up or pitch it down until it sounds good. Okay? That's important. Find the note, and I can even stop the chord progression and then just sing a note then. That would also help, but I don't want to stop playing. Okay, now we get into kind of like the main course, I guess. I want to ask you what the function of all of these chords are, right? Now, function's kind of a fancy term, and if you don't, like if you've heard people say like, oh, it's the flat 7 or the 5 chord or whatever, that's what we're saying when we say function. People also say tonic, dominant, subdominant. These are all function words. I don't care about the words. What I care about is how does it feel? So we felt where the resolve point was, and if we think of that resolve point as home, the other places are kind of like different locations. So for example, one of the chords might sound like, oh, okay, we've gone somewhere, but is it really a comfortable place or an uncomfortable place? You know, some chords kind of feel to me like, oh, I'm not home, and at some point I gotta go back to this like resolved home feeling, but this place is nice. It's a nice place to stay. I feel pretty comfortable here. I'm at a friend's house or something. And then other chord progressions feel to me like, oh, I don't want to be here. I'm just kind of have to go here to get from one place to another place. You know, that sort of thing. So that's the chord function. And I often talk with my students about it being, you know, home and away, because I think that's almost, I don't know, it's easier to understand than it is to think of like what the functions are. You could also think about it as like colors. Okay, now another thing you can ask yourself is, are these chords major or minor? Like, is the whole progression sound major to you? Or does it sound minor to you? And what about each individual chord? Do they sound major or minor? Oops. You know, that takes a little bit. Sorry, I'm off on the chord progression. But it's just nice to guess. And after guessing a long time, you just start getting more and more right. Okay, so now another thing we can listen to is the higher and the lower notes, because I'm actually emphasizing some of these, right? So if you can kind of hear the high and low notes, that can often help you out with this. Okay. So we talked a little bit about singing one note on one of these chords, where it feels most resolved. I want to give you a technique here in which I often call this as like, you can call it like a shell melody or a scaffolding melody, is I want you to try to sing a melody, one note on each chord. So you sing a note that sounds good on one chord, and when the chord changes, you either stay on the same note. If that same note sounds good, then just stay on that same note. If it doesn't sound good, just move it up or down to make it sound good. So for example, I'll sing one. I'll go. I'll sing a song. Da, da. Okay, that sounds good. Da. It still sounds pretty good on this chord. Da. Wants to go up, down. Right, so now I have that little melody. Da, da, dee, da. And that can really help me figure out what the chords are, and we'll talk about that when we get there. Okay, and then the last thing is, if I tell you what that first chord is, right, can you figure out what the other chords are? Or just take a guess? And this is a big part of what we're going to do. So I told you to put your guitars down, so hopefully you haven't figured any of this stuff out. Because what's really important to help develop your ears is to guess first without the guitar, and then you check. Guess, then check. Guess, then check. Every single one of my students. What's this chord? They're like, nope. And it's, what? No, that's not how you do it. Like, get a sound in your head. Ba. Sometimes singing can be really, really helpful. Listen to it. Sing it. Sometimes it's hard to keep that note sung, but if you can sing it or just have it in your head, ba, I can find that note. And it doesn't matter what octave, you know. That sometimes is hard for people, is da, that's where I'm singing it, but I could play it here, sounds pretty okay. So if you have a melody in your head, then you can kind of figure that out. So that shell melody I sang, what was it? Ba, ba, da, da. So I could figure that out. Da, 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 da. Now, by definition, if I sing a melody and it sounds good on the chord, then that note is in the chord. Maybe the guitar is not playing that note, but just because I've sung that note, it's part of the chord. That's what people are hearing when they're listening to it. They're listening to all these notes plus the note I'm singing, so that's the chord that we're hearing. So most of the time when you sing a note, it's literally part of the chord, right? So da, that first note I sang was a G, so I can think about all the different shapes that I could play that have a G in them, right? And if I just know my open chord shapes, that's a lot of them, right? Like it could be a G chord, it could be a C chord, it could be, I guess, an A minor 7 chord. You can get kind of a little bit further there. But if we're dealing with just triads, which most music is, you're going to end up with, you know, that note could be part of either 3 major chords or 3 minor chords, because there's only 3 notes in every chord when we're dealing with triads. Okay, so those shell melodies, now that I'm talking about them, I may as well just keep going. Like scaffolding melodies are really, really helpful. And not only helpful for figuring out what chords are, because you can kind of figure that out and go from chord to chord, but they're also really helpful for like improvising. especially when there's a chord progression that's really tough. If I can figure out a chord progression, like a melody that just is a simple stepping down and up, I feel like I have at least a line, or like a place where I can move to and then improvise around it, right? So that can be really, really helpful if you're ever having a hard time coming up with a melody or improvising over a chord progression that's kind of tough. Okay, let's really quickly just kind of go through this list and talk about each of the things. So, where is the beat? It could be in different places. This is like boom, 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 boom. Or you could be feeling it boom, 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 right? Now, how am I grouping that? Well, there's subtle things I'm doing on the guitar with this strum pattern and like my dynamics that are kind of accenting that. It's like, okay, this is what I'm grouping it. And this is grouped in groups of 4. I'm just repeating a 4-beat, like kind of rhythmic pattern. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now this chord progression, when does it repeat? We had this chord, this chord, this chord, and back to the original chord. And then it repeats, right? So we have I guess it's 8 bars because we're doing 2 bars on each of those chords, right? Now, how often do the chords change? Well, I just said that. We went one chord to another chord to another chord, and then another chord. So the chords are changing once, twice, 3 times, and then when it repeats, it stays at the same. So you're kind of stuck between those two. When does it feel resolved? Well, for me, this is very obvious. The very first chord feels quite resolved. Oh, and then I move someplace, and then I'm going to another place that's maybe even a little bit. Oh, and then I'm back, and this feels resolved. I could end right here. I wouldn't resolve on this chord. It feels kind of weird. I'd want to go down to this chord, or this chord doesn't feel resolved. It feels this chord, right? Now, just revealing the chord progression here. Right, it's a G chord, going to a C chord, going to a D chord, and then back to a G. Now, if you didn't know that, that's totally fine, but it's kind of nice to just spend this time kind of feeling, okay, I know where the beat is, I know where it repeats, I know what the chord is that feels like the most resolved chord. Like, that is a win. Like, as soon as you're doing that, you know that you're at least progressing in this. If you can feel confident about that stuff, it's really helpful. I find that sometimes I do this when I'm listening to music that like a student brings in, is I'll start listening to it and I will just be kind of like guessing what it is and I'm having a hard time. And I go, oh, just stop and listen to it a little bit. Like, get confident with what the groove is, where it resolves. Like, that can be really helpful. Now, talking about the functions. What are the functions of this chord? So, again, there's different language. I said earlier, this feels like home. This is away, maybe at a friend's house, but it's pretty chill. Here is maybe like I kind of feel like I'm about ready to get back home, and then I go home, right? In classical players will call this first part the tonic, the home. The C chord is the subdominant, which is kind of the like, chill away place. And then the D chord is the dominant, which kind of wants to go back to the tonic. And we actually can group all of those, all chords, every single chord there is, we can kind of group them in that. Like it's different shades of it. Are we at home? Or are we at some other chill place that kind of doesn't feel okay, that feels okay? Or are we in some place that's pushing us? Like, for example, this chord really wants to go back to this one. You can have much more anxious chords in there. We also call these chords by the Nashville numbering system, or just the way that I learned rock players do it. We call the first chord the 1 chord, the home chord is 1, and then in the key of G, G is 1, G, A, B, C is the 4, which is the same thing as the subdominant, and the D, G, A, B, C, D is the 5. That's our chord. So this chord progression goes 1, 4, 5, 1. Very, very simple kind of chord progression. Guessing if it's major or minor, that's just something that's kind of nice to do. You just start guessing, like before you go on the guitar, you just check, is that a major chord or a minor chord? And if you're doing that regularly, you get better and better and better at it. Talking about the low and high notes, that's another important thing too, because often if I'm trying to figure out a chord progression, you can hear the bass line. Even if it's just a guitar player playing it. And if that's clear for your ear, which often players are emphasizing that, it makes it a lot easier. And then the high note, like whatever that high note is, you normally can your ear can get that before any sort of other information. So if you can go, okay, well, this note and this note sound good, you can kind of guess about what's in the middle of that, right? Now, we talked a little bit about those shell melodies where you're just kind of singing, like, okay, here's one. So let's jump into assignments here. So for an assignment, one thing is I want you to create 1 or 2 shell melodies for that chord progression. Go back and listen to me playing it and just try to sing some stuff. And then I want you to find that melody on your guitar. Find the melody. Worry about the melody first, and try to come up with a couple of them. And after a while, like, you find that these melodies kind of hint at the chords, which is why, if you haven't done this before, there's lots of times someone can sing something. It's like a totally new song, and you can hear in the melody, oh, yeah, it's this chord, right? Just because there's different options that you could do. For example, what was the melody I sang? G, I went G, G, D, A, G, da, da, dee, da. And I could just kind of go like, well, you could come up with totally different chords that work that, right? So like, if I was just guessing off that melody, someone singing that, ba, well, yeah, sure, G, why not? Ba, well, what's another chord that has a G in it? I could have ba, and E minor has a G in it. Da, well, what has this note in it? Well, an F chord has that note in it. Ba, da. Why not C minor? Oh man, that's gonna be crazy. But then we have that melody. Ba, da, ba. So, and that's reharmonization. And a lot of times you can even have situations where different players are playing different harmonies, and if it kind of fits into the function of when it resolves, you often don't have much of a problem. Okay, so yeah, come up with a couple different melodies of that. Then I want you to come up with your own chord progression and see if you can come up with some guide tone melodies over top of that. First sing them and then play them, right? I guess you could do it just on the guitar too. That's also a nice thing to do, like if you feel uncomfortable singing, is just play through the chord progression. Just try to find these single note melodies that only every time the chord changes, that's only time you're allowed to change the melody, okay? And then the final thing that's an assignment is listen to songs. You can do it with any song you want. Like you're on the bus listening to stuff, you're in the supermarket and some horrible music is coming up. Just listen and kind of go through a bit of this list. Like, where's the beat? How are these notes grouped? When does it resolve? When does it feel most tense? When are the chords changing? Like, just do that on a regular basis so you feel really confident with that. Because if you're not confident about when the chords are going to change, like trying to find them is just another level there. So first get that, and then come up with little melodies. Just get in the habit of doing little melodies. I don't know what those 2 chords are, but the same note works on both of them, that one note. Like, that is useful information that if you're doing that regularly, it becomes very, very helpful when you're trying to figure this stuff out. Okay, now for further explorations, there's a couple things I'm going to suggest. One thing is transposition. As soon as you have a chord progression, transpose it into different keys, right? So this 1-4-5, I'm not going to go through all of what transposition is. I've done that in other videos. But like, if you know what a 1-4-5 is, then you can put it in different keys. So if you figure out, like what 1-4-5 is in G, do it in C, play that same chord progression, 1-4-5-1. Put it in other keys, A, 1-4-5-1. Because we hear these chord progressions not by like universal notes, like we're looking at colors. We hear them how they're related to each other. So when you start to think about chord progressions in that way, it becomes easier for you to hear them, right? As opposed to hearing, oh, that's a C to an A minor. You're like, oh, well, in this case, the C is the tonic chord, and then the A minor is the 6th chord. But you could also have it the flip way. Like maybe in the other case, the A minor is the resolved one, and that's our 1 chord, and the C is kind of like a 3 chord. Transposition. Go in, take your guitar, write a whole bunch of chord progressions, record them, and then listen back to yourself playing out once, like a week later, and guess what they are. Because there's something about when you play the chord progressions yourself that you really have this like intimate feeling about it. And I find that when you record yourself playing something and then you listen to it, it becomes so much more clear what's going on. So when you do that as a regular exercise, this becomes a lot easier to do. Now, another thing to do is, especially like, get more advanced with the chord progressions. These are very, very, very simple. But when you hear a chord that you like let's say there's a chord that you like in a song, you hear a G goes to, I don't know, an F. Or like I did before, that C minor. That was kind of a cool chord. And then the C minor. Well, if you hear that chord progression, that chord, and you're like, I like that chord. Well, what is it? It's going from the 1 chord to like the 4 minor, right? If you can analyze it that way, then you can start using it. How would I put it in the key of D? Well, if I'm in the key of D, well, what's my 4? It's the G. So if I put a G minor there, right? Oh, that's kind of cool. That's that sound. So take a chord that you like, or a chord progression, mix up the chords, but like take one of those chords, that sound, that flavor of that 4 minor, let's say, and record yourself making a bunch of different chord progressions with it, right? Try it out. Like, start to hear that sound, and it's going to come up more and more often. Like when you're playing Creep, you're going to hear someone playing Creep, and you're like, oh, that's that 4 minor sound. I know that. And then, yeah, improvise. Create all these shell melodies all the time. Okay, that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed this lesson. If you did, please let me know, maybe in some comments, or support me on Patreon. I'm going to have a worksheet for all of these things up, available on Patreon. But yeah, hope you enjoyed this. Till next time.